Imagine boarding a luxurious first-class flight, your hard-earned ticket in hand, only to find a stranger smugly occupying your seat. For Aisha Thompson, a 28-year-old black tech billionaire disguised in casual jeans and a hoodie, this wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a spark that ignited a storm of prejudice high above the clouds. As she politely pointed out the error, the white passenger's disdainful glare cut through the cabin like a knife. But seconds after the confrontation began, alarms blared and the plane shuddered violently. What started as a simple seat mix-up spiraled into a grounding that exposed deep-seated biases, forcing everyone on board to confront an uncomfortable truth. Buckle up. This tale of injustice at 30,000 feet will leave you questioning privilege and power. Aisha Thompson had always moved through the world with a quiet confidence, her achievements hidden behind a modest demeanor. Born in a modest Detroit neighborhood, she rose from coding in her bedroom to founding a revolutionary AI startup that transformed healthcare diagnostics, amassing a fortune that placed her among the youngest black billionaires in America. Yet at 28, she preferred blending in. Simple outfits, no flashy jewelry, just her sharp mind and unyielding drive. On this crisp autumn morning, she boarded Flight 247 from New York to Los Angeles, her first-class seat a rare indulgence after closing a massive deal. The airport buzzed with the usual chaos: hurried travelers, echoing announcements, the faint scent of coffee mingling with jet fuel. Aisha clutched her boarding pass, her mind already drifting to the investor meetings awaiting her in LA. She navigated the crowded terminal, her dark curls tied back, her backpack slung over one shoulder. As she stepped onto the plane, the flight attendants offered warm smiles, but she noticed the subtle glances, those fleeting assessments that often came with being a young black woman in spaces not designed for her. Making her way to seat 2A, she found it already occupied. A middle-aged white man in a crisp suit lounged there, his laptop open, legs sprawled as if the space were his kingdom. He didn't even look up at first. Aisha paused, double-checking her ticket. Yes, 2A. Her heart quickened slightly, a familiar twinge of anticipation for the microaggressions that peppered her life. She cleared her throat softly, hoping for a simple resolution. But as he finally glanced her way, his expression shifted from annoyance to disbelief, perhaps even entitlement. He adjusted his glasses, scanning her appearance, and in that moment, the air thickened with unspoken assumptions. As Aisha hovered in the aisle, the man's reluctance deepened the unease rippling through the cabin. He shifted uncomfortably, his posture straightening as if to assert dominance, but he made no move to vacate the seat. Instead, he flagged down a flight attendant with a wave that screamed authority, his voice low but insistent in a way that drew nearby passengers' attention. The attendant, a young woman with a practiced smile, approached quickly, her eyes darting between them. Aisha remained composed, her expression neutral, but inside a storm brewed, the kind forged from years of navigating spaces where her presence alone invited scrutiny. The attendant checked the boarding passes, her brow furrowing slightly. It was clear, Aisha's ticket confirmed 2A. Yet the man persisted, his face flushing with irritation, muttering something about upgrades and mix-ups. He glanced at Aisha again, his gaze lingering on her casual attire, her youth, her skin tone, as if these elements disqualified her from belonging in first class. The injustice simmered subtly at first, a quiet erosion of dignity that Aisha had felt before, in boardrooms where her ideas were doubted, in stores where security shadowed her steps. But here, amplified by the confined space of the aircraft, it felt heavier, more personal. Passengers began to notice, their whispers like static in the air. An elderly couple across the aisle exchanged glances, while a businessman buried his face in his newspaper, avoiding involvement. Aisha's pulse quickened. She could sense the familiar weight of being the other, the one expected to yield. Drawing on her inner strength, she stood her ground, her backpack still on her shoulder, refusing to escalate, but also refusing to back down. The flight attendant, caught in the middle, radioed for assistance from the gate agent, delaying the boarding process. Minutes stretched into an uncomfortable limbo, the cabin growing warmer as more travelers filed in, their impatience palpable. As tension mounted, revelations trickled in. The man, it turned out, was a mid-level executive from a rival tech firm, accustomed to privileges that smoothed his path. His assumption that Aisha must be in the wrong section stemmed from a deeply ingrained bias, one that viewed success through a narrow lens. Aisha's mind raced back to her journey, the scholarships she fought for, the late nights coding while others partied, the investors who dismissed her until her prototypes proved undeniable. This seat wasn't just fabric and cushion, it symbolized her triumph over barriers erected by systemic bias. As the plane pushed back from the gate, the engines humming to life, Aisha finally took an adjacent seat temporarily, her body tense, the injustice gnawing at her. She pulled out her phone, discreetly noting the incident, her fingers trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the raw anger of being reduced once more. The plane climbed into the sky, but the conflict lingered like turbulence. Then, without warning, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, announcing minor technical issues. Whispers spread. Was it related to the earlier delay? The man's face paled, his earlier confidence cracking as the plane banked unexpectedly. The plane jolted sharply, sending trays rattling and passengers gripping their armrests. Alarms pierced the cabin, a shrill warning that cut through the mounting chaos. The captain's voice returned, steady but urgent, announcing an emergency return to the airport due to a detected system malfunction, something triggered during pre-flight checks but overlooked in the rush. Hearts pounded as oxygen masks dangled teasingly, though not yet deployed, and the aircraft began its descent, the world outside tilting unnervingly. In the midst of this, the man's facade shattered. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fumbled with his seatbelt, his earlier confidence evaporating into panic. Aisha, seated nearby, felt a surge of vindication mixed with dread. The flight's grounding wasn't mere coincidence. Investigations would later trace it back to a hurried gate resolution, where the delay from the seat dispute had masked a critical sensor error. But in that intense moment, the emotional peak crested as eyes turned toward the man, whispers evolving into accusatory stares. His refusal to yield, rooted in prejudice, had not only humiliated Aisha, but endangered everyone. Aisha's composure held like steel, her mind flashing through the what-ifs, the lives at stake because one person's bias rippled outward. The cabin lights flickered as flight attendants rushed through aisles, their professionalism stretched thin. The man avoided her gaze, shrinking into his seat, the power dynamic flipping in an instant. Below, emergency vehicles lined the runway, lights flashing like beacons of accountability. The descent felt eternal, each bump a punctuation to the unfolding drama. Aisha's breath steadied, drawing strength from her ancestors' resilience, from the civil rights battles that paved her path. This wasn't just a flight interruption, it was a metaphor for how prejudice seeps into every system, grounding us all in division. As wheels touched tarmac with a thud, relief washed over the passengers. But for Aisha, the true climax was internal, the realization that her quiet stand had forced a reckoning, even if unspoken. The plane taxied to a halt amid flashing lights, passengers disembarking in a daze, their plans upended. Airport authorities swarmed, questioning the crew about the sequence of events. The man, now pale and subdued, gathered his belongings hastily, avoiding eye contact as he slipped into the crowd. But Aisha lingered, cooperating with investigators who pieced together the timeline. The seat dispute had extended boarding, allowing a faulty sensor, flagged but not addressed, to go unnoticed until airborne. While not directly his fault, his actions had contributed to the oversight, highlighting how personal biases can cascade into collective peril. In the days that followed, Aisha channeled the incident into fuel for change. She anonymously tipped off media outlets, sparking stories about everyday prejudice in travel. Her startup flourished